When naming the most influential people in history, the list wouldn't be complete without the name Leonardo da Vinci. The Renaissance man, as he's often called, revolutionized art, science, and technology, yet there was a side to him, one that many people never see, that made his genius even more remarkable. The world remembers him for the Mona Lisa, the Vitruvian Man, and his groundbreaking contributions to anatomy and flight. But beyond the masterpieces, there was a hidden, almost mystical side to his mind, one that has kept historians and scholars fascinated for centuries. By the end of this story, you'll see Leonardo in a way you never have before. Born on April 15, 1452, in the small town of Vinci in Italy, Leonardo was the illegitimate son of a wealthy notary and a peasant woman. His early life was far from privileged. Raised by his father, Leonardo was not only exposed to the finest education available, but he was also exposed to the world of art at an early age. However, it was not the usual path of a child of privilege. In fact, his talent for drawing was evident before he even entered formal education. But despite his early brilliance, his formal schooling was, by most standards, limited. In those days, education was reserved for the wealthy, and Leonardo was not considered wealthy by any means. His father, however, recognized the spark of genius in him and arranged for him to be apprenticed to one of the leading artists in Florence. At the age of 14, Leonardo began his apprenticeship with Andrea del Verrocchio, a well-known artist and sculptor. It was during this time that Leonardo began to explore the world of painting, but his talents went far beyond just the visual arts. He was naturally curious about everything. From the mechanics of machines to the anatomy of the human body, he was determined to understand the world in its most intricate detail. Before we look at his contribution to science, let's first delve into his work and contribution to the world of arts, and the approach that made him stand out till date. The Renaissance period, which spanned from the 14th to the 17th centuries, was a time of great intellectual and cultural transformation. During this time, the human experience became the focal point of both art and thought. Humanism, an intellectual movement that emphasized the value of individual experience and rational thought, was at the heart of the Renaissance. Leonardo da Vinci, along with other famous Renaissance figures such as Michelangelo and Raphael, epitomized the spirit of this cultural renaissance. For Leonardo, painting was not merely about creating beautiful images, it was an attempt to understand nature, the human form, light, and the universe. His deep engagement with scientific principles, anatomy, and natural observation laid the foundation for many of the revolutionary techniques and approaches he used in his art. Leonardo sought to express the complexity and beauty of nature by using the tools of both art and science. His meticulous study of the natural world helped him develop a unique artistic method that set him apart from his contemporaries. One of Leonardo's most significant contributions to art is his mastery of light and shadow, which he employed to create a sense of depth, form, and realism. This technique, known as chiaroscuro, Italian for light to dark, involves the use of contrasting light and shadow to suggest volume and three-dimensionality. By manipulating light in this way, Leonardo was able to bring his subjects to life on the canvas, creating a sense of realism that was unprecedented in his time. In his painting The Baptism of Christ, circa 1472 to 1475, Leonardo demonstrated an early use of chiaroscuro, where the light flows across the figures in a naturalistic way, providing a sense of depth and weight. However, it was in his later works that the technique reached its full potential, particularly in his masterpieces The Last Supper and Mona Lisa. In The Last Supper, Leonardo's use of light and shadow is integral to the composition. The figures of Christ and his disciples are bathed in light, with the darker background emphasizing their forms. This creates a dramatic and emotional atmosphere, drawing the viewer's attention to the central figure of Christ. By carefully controlling the interplay of light and shadow, Leonardo was able to convey the psychological depth and complexity of the scene, illustrating the emotional turmoil and tension of the moment when Christ announces that one of his disciples will betray him. Similarly, in Mona Lisa, Leonardo's subtle use of light and shadow on the subject's face and hands creates an illusion of depth, making the figure appear almost three-dimensional. The sfumato technique, which involves the delicate blending of tones without harsh lines, allows the transition between light and shadow to be almost imperceptible. This technique was so finely executed that it gives the viewer the impression of a living, breathing woman, enhancing the mystery and allure of the portrait. One of Leonardo's most influential contributions to painting is his development and refinement of sfumato, a technique that uses subtle transitions between colors and tones to create a soft, almost imperceptible outline, eliminating harsh lines in favor of smooth gradation. The word sfumato comes from the Italian word sfumare, meaning to tone down or to evaporate. While other artists used blending to some degree, Leonardo took sfumato to a level of refinement that had never been seen before. This allowed him to achieve a level of realism in his portraits and figures that no one had previously imagined. The most famous example of sfumato is in his iconic painting Mona Lisa. The soft transitions of light and shadow on her face, especially around the eyes, mouth, and cheeks, create a lifelike quality that makes her expression appear alive and in constant flux, enhancing the mystery of her smile. In Leonardo's other works, such as The Virgin of the Rocks and St. John the Baptist, sfumato was used to create an ethereal, almost dreamlike quality. The figures seem to emerge from the background in soft transitions, blurring the distinction between the subject and the environment. This technique created a new approach to realism that influenced generations of artists after Leonardo. Leonardo was also a pioneering figure in the study of human anatomy. His anatomical works were revolutionary, not only because of the sheer precision and detail of his drawings, but also due to his methodical approach to studying the human body in ways that were considered controversial during his time. In fact, Leonardo's anatomical investigations were so ahead of their time that they would not be fully appreciated until centuries later. Leonardo's fascination with the human body was born out of his passion for understanding the mechanics of life. As an artist, he wanted to capture the human form as accurately as possible, but as a scientist, he sought to understand the inner workings of the body itself, how muscles, bones, and organs function together to create movement and life. He believed that the true mastery of anatomy would allow him to perfect his art, enabling him to paint and sculpt more realistic and lifelike figures. In order to achieve this, Leonardo didn't rely on conventional teachings of the time, which were largely based on ancient Greek and Roman knowledge. Instead, he took a radical approach. He dissected human cadavers himself. This was highly controversial, as it went against the religious and social norms of the day. In Renaissance Italy, the Catholic Church prohibited the dissection of human bodies, and many people viewed it as a taboo subject. However, Leonardo's insatiable curiosity led him to bypass these limitations, often secretly conducting dissections in the dark, hidden chambers of hospitals or private homes. He would often work at night, cutting open human cadavers with a keen eye and a steady hand, documenting his findings in what would eventually become hundreds of detailed drawings and notes. Leonardo's first anatomical dissection took place in 1489 when he gained permission to examine the body of a criminal who had been executed. Over the following years, he continued to dissect over 30 human bodies, including those of both men and women, as well as fetuses. His investigations ranged from the surface of the skin to the innermost organs, and he meticulously recorded his observations in a series of notebooks. These notes, written in mirror image script, which only he could read, are a testament to his scientific rigor and artistic mastery. They contain some of the most detailed and accurate depictions of human anatomy ever created, combining his sharp observational skills with his unparalleled artistic talent. One of Leonardo's most remarkable anatomical studies was his investigation into the heart. At the time, it was widely believed that the heart was the seat of emotion and life itself. However, Leonardo went beyond the traditional understanding and examined the heart as an organ of circulation. He discovered the precise structure of the heart's valves and their role in the circulation of blood, though he did not have the understanding of circulation as we do today. His drawings of the heart's anatomy are extraordinarily detailed and show an understanding of its complexity far beyond the scientific knowledge of the time. In addition to the heart, Leonardo also dissected the brain and the nervous system, creating drawings of the brain's ventricles, the spinal cord, and the sensory organs. His studies of the nervous system, which were centuries ahead of their time, showed a detailed understanding of the way nerves and muscles interacted to produce movement. His depictions of the brain's structure, especially the ventricles, were so accurate that they foreshadowed discoveries that would not be made until much later. Leonardo even understood the importance of the pineal gland in regulating the flow of bodily fluids, a theory that was later proven by modern science. Leonardo's most famous anatomical works are his studies of the human musculoskeletal system. As an artist, he was determined to understand how the muscles and bones work together to produce movement. His studies of the muscles, especially the muscles of the face, were groundbreaking in their attention to detail. He produced drawings showing the intricate connections between muscles and how they allowed the human body to move with such fluidity and precision. Leonardo's studies of the facial muscles, for instance, were used in the creation of his expressive figures in painting and sculpture. His detailed understanding of the way muscles contracted and relaxed helped him to capture the naturalistic movements in his works. Leonardo also studied how muscles functioned in tandem with the bones to produce a wide range of movements. His sketches of the human skeleton reveal not just an anatomical representation of the bones, but a true understanding of their relationship to each other, something that had been overlooked in previous anatomical studies. He even demonstrated an early understanding of the biomechanics of movement, drawing connections between the body's bones, muscles, and joints to illustrate the forces involved in actions like walking, sitting, and standing. For example, in his drawings of the leg muscles, Leonardo showed how the muscles work together in a complex system to support movement. He depicted the muscles in their natural state and how they stretched and contracted during different motions. This was a major contribution to both anatomy and art, as it allowed him to portray the human form more realistically in his paintings, such as in the figure of Saint John the Baptist, and other works where he aimed for a level of accuracy never before seen in Western art. Leonardo's anatomical studies also included a focus on female anatomy, which was even more radical for the time. Women's bodies had been largely ignored or misunderstood by Renaissance anatomists, but Leonardo, determined to study the human body in all its complexity, undertook dissections of female cadavers. He closely examined the organs of reproduction, documenting the structure of the uterus and ovaries. His detailed sketches of the female reproductive system were revolutionary, as they depicted the processes of pregnancy and childbirth with remarkable accuracy. Perhaps one of the most striking aspects of Leonardo's study of female anatomy was his observation of the development of the fetus in the womb. He accurately depicted the stages of fetal development, illustrating the shape and position of the fetus in different stages of pregnancy. He was one of the first to suggest that the fetus was nourished by the placenta, a theory that would not be confirmed until much later. Unfortunately, Leonardo's anatomical works remained largely hidden during his lifetime. His dissection notes were scattered, and many of his drawings were incomplete or never published. Because of the secrecy surrounding his dissections and the taboo nature of his work, much of Leonardo's anatomical genius was unknown during his time. It was only centuries later, after his notebooks were rediscovered, that the full extent of his anatomical studies came to light. Even then, many of his discoveries were not recognized until the 19th and 20th centuries, when modern medical science caught up to his observations. While Leonardo's anatomical studies were groundbreaking, they were also controversial. His radical approach to dissection, combined with his unorthodox views on the human body, set him apart from his contemporaries and placed him in conflict with the Church's teachings. For example, some of his drawings suggest that he may have questioned the traditional Christian views of the soul's connection to the body. His focus on the physical mechanics of life, rather than the spiritual or theological understanding, was seen as a challenge to the religious doctrines of the time. As a result, Leonardo's anatomical works were largely suppressed, and much of his scientific legacy remained hidden. Despite this, Leonardo's anatomical studies have since been recognized as some of the most important contributions to the field of medicine. His observations and drawings have influenced generations of doctors, scientists, and artists. His ability to blend art and science allowed him to capture the human body in a way that was both scientifically accurate and artistically beautiful, a combination that remains unmatched to this day. Leonardo was not just an artist and a scientist, he was a visionary. It's hard to imagine, but many of the ideas he developed in his notebooks were centuries ahead of their time. He sketched designs for flying machines, a helicopter, and even a tank, machines that wouldn't become a reality until the 20th century. And while his artistic works like The Last Supper and the Mona Lisa are considered masterpieces today, they were far from the only things that consumed his mind. What most people don't know about Leonardo is that he was always searching for the underlying principles of nature, often developing his own scientific methods. His notebooks, filled with pages of sketches and ideas, are a testament to his brilliant and unorthodox approach to understanding the world. Unlike other artists and scientists of his time, Leonardo didn't limit himself to one area of study. His interests spanned across a range of disciplines, from architecture to engineering to botany. He wanted to understand everything, and this insatiable curiosity set him apart from most other intellectuals of the era. As a young man, Leonardo's fame as an artist quickly grew, but so did his ambitions. In 1482, he left Florence and moved to Milan, where he became the chief engineer and painter for the Duke of Milan, Ludovico Sforza. It was here that Leonardo's genius began to truly shine, as he worked on an array of projects that blended art, engineering, and science. His painting of The Last Supper, perhaps one of the most famous works of art in history, was not just a masterpiece of composition and symbolism, it was also a technical marvel. He used a new method of painting that allowed for a deeper, more natural depiction of light and shadow, creating a realism that had never been seen before in art. But it wasn't just his art that captured the imagination of his contemporaries. Leonardo was obsessed with machines and engineering. He would spend hours designing devices and structures that, in many cases, had no practical use in his time, but foreshadowed the technology of the future. In his notebooks, Leonardo sketched designs for flying machines, including a glider and a helicopter, concepts that wouldn't be realized until centuries later. He also designed early versions of the diving suit, the armored tank, and the mechanical knight, a precursor to the modern robot. Despite all of his talents and inventions, Leonardo was not without his flaws. He was often disorganized, and many of his ideas were left unfinished. He moved from one project to the next, never settling on a single pursuit for long. This restlessness was, in part, what made him such a unique figure in history. He never stayed in one place or confined himself to a single discipline. He was a man constantly searching, constantly evolving. One of the most fascinating aspects of Leonardo's life is the mystery that surrounds his personal beliefs. Like many of his contemporaries, Leonardo was deeply religious, but he also questioned the doctrines of the Church. His notebooks are filled with observations and reflections that suggest he was a thinker ahead of his time. He seemed to view the natural world as a reflection of divine order, but he also approached it with a scientific mind. He believed that the universe could be understood through observation and experimentation, not just through religious doctrine. Leonardo's religious beliefs, or rather his unorthodox interpretations of them, have fascinated scholars for centuries. He was known to have been critical of the Church's teachings, particularly its views on the human soul and the nature of divinity. Some scholars even believe that his famous painting of the Last Supper contains hidden symbols that reveal his own personal beliefs about the divine and the nature of Christ. But it wasn't just religious questions that occupied Leonardo's mind. He also had a deep interest in the nature of light, color, and the human experience. His studies of anatomy and his detailed drawings of the human body revealed a profound understanding of how the body works, but they also reflected his obsession with the intersection of science and art. His famous Vitruvian Man, for example, is not just an artistic representation of the human body. It's a mathematical study of the proportions that make the body a perfect reflection of the universe itself. While Leonardo's works on human anatomy were groundbreaking, they were not without controversy. At the time, the dissection of human bodies was considered taboo, but Leonardo's pursuit of knowledge led him to study the body in ways that others were unwilling to do. He dissected not only humans, but also animals, meticulously documenting his observations in hundreds of pages of drawings and notes. Despite his incredible mind, Leonardo was often conflicted in his personal life. He never married and had no children, and there are few records of any romantic relationships. Some historians speculate that he may have been gay, though there is no definitive evidence to confirm this. He was a deeply private man who kept his personal thoughts and emotions hidden from the public eye. What we know of Leonardo comes primarily from his notebooks, which contain a blend of sketches, scientific observations, and personal reflections. In these writings, he reveals his doubts, fears, and frustrations, giving us a rare glimpse into the psyche of a genius. In his later years, Leonardo spent time in France, where he continued to work on his ideas and inventions. He was welcomed by King Francis I, who admired him greatly and even kept him close in his court. It was here, in the town of Amboise, that Leonardo spent the final years of his life, surrounded by the works that had defined him. Leonardo died on May 2, 1519, at the age of 67. His death was not only the end of an era, but also the end of a life that had been dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what was possible. In the years following his death, Leonardo's legacy would grow, but it would be many centuries before the full extent of his genius was recognized. Today, he is celebrated not only as one of the greatest artists of all time, but also as a pioneering scientist, engineer, and inventor. His notebooks, filled with drawings of machines, anatomical studies, and philosophical musings, have become some of the most valuable historical documents in the world. Leonardo da Vinci was not just a man of his time, he was a man ahead of his time. His genius, hidden beneath layers of mystery and complexity, continues to inspire and challenge us today. Through his art, his inventions, and his unyielding quest for knowledge, Leonardo da Vinci changed the way we see the world. And in many ways, he changed the world itself. For centuries, the world has been captivated by Leonardo's legacy, and his works continue to be studied, analyzed, and admired. His life is a testament to the power of curiosity, creativity, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. As we look back on the hidden genius of Leonardo da Vinci, we are reminded that the boundaries of human achievement are not set by the constraints of the present, but by the vision of those who dare to look beyond. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was insightful and educative. If you like this video, do well to click like, share, and subscribe for more insightful videos like this. See you later. Bye.